Welcome to the All Things Circular podcast, your gateway to the circular economy. Hosted by industry experts Victoria Darcy and Rich Bulger. Every episode is proof that circularity isn't just good for the planet. It's a smart business decision. Our mission is simple: to empower, to inform, and to show you how to make the circular economy work for you.
Hello, welcome to another episode of All Things Circular. I'm Rich Bulger.
I'm Vic Darcy.
And we are doing something different today. This is our very first 2-on-2 interview.
Wow. It is.
Yeah, so it kind of feels like this is something fun and fresh. And we have two of the funnest and freshest people I've ever met on this panel.
I feel fun and fresh.
Yeah.
I feel fun.
All right, so fun and fresh. We have new names, but I'm sure our audience members would love to know who you really are and what you do for a living. So Douglas, would you like to start?
Yeah, I'm Douglas Kent. So I'm the Executive Vice President for the Association for Supply Chain Management, the largest supply chain credentialing nonprofit in the world.
Douglas is also my co-author, which is a very important part of your title. My name is Deborah Dull. I wear a few hats. I am the founder of the Circular Supply Chain Network, a free space for supply chain professionals to come together around their curiosity for the circular economy. I'm also the managing partner for Trillium Digital Services. We spend a lot of time looking at how enterprises can use the technologies that's out today to build for tomorrow. Very excited to be here today. Thank you very much for having us. And my last title, I suppose, is Douglas's co-author.
Co-author.
Oh, I love that. So, Deborah, I've met you before. Douglas, this is the first time we're meeting. But Deborah, you were wonderful enough to host me at the CSCN event in London a couple of weeks ago. I really loved it. It was six speakers. It was, fast paced, but the information that came out was just phenomenal. It was such an educational event. Can you sort of expand on that for our listeners and really just, tell them why you did it, what it does, and the kind of the information and the education that it provides?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for coming to it. We will be hosting another on May 15th.
Oh, in London.
Back in London, same room. I think we'll probably outgrow it. So it'll probably be our last time in that space. But we are listening to what our members are looking for. It's free to join, but we still like to serve a purpose. So we ask often what people are wanting, and getting it together in person is very much on people's mind. And so as we have a great team in London over the last year or so, we've been hosting happy hours, and they've become more and more popular. And in the last one, we had an ask for a non-happy hour, a sober hours, if you will, of time really exploring, showcasing the technologies, who's doing what are the problems, what's working. And so the first one was really meant to be rapid. Let's test out a bunch of different perspectives. We had industry analysts. We had some showcases of who's doing it now. We had technologies. We had some theory. We had some practical to see what is interesting for people. And so the next one will be focused around still showcasing the companies doing it, like Zebra Technologies. Yep. Had a wonderful story. He'll also be our speaker at our discussion group at the end of this month in March, which we host virtually every month. And then we'll have a problem solving session. So actually get into a problem statement and try to come out with a solution set. And we'll do some spotlights on some innovative technology and solutions, which I'm really excited about. So it'll slow down just slightly and create the networking space throughout the event, but we'll certainly still end with a happy hour.
Oh, no, it's great. And but the information that was delivered was just phenomenal, because it crossed so many disciplines. Yeah, it was wonderful. So, Douglas, we haven't met. And supply chain, this is more Rich's bag than mine. So, I'm kind of a newbie. Can I ask you to explain to our listeners, about the nonprofit, what it is that you do and what do you support?
Well, I think from the nonprofit standpoint, we have a simple mission, and that is to educate supply chain professionals. I don't have to remind everybody that today is the time in which we need to really make sure that talent keeps pace with technology.
Absolutely.
And it couldn't be overestimated right now. And that becomes a big problem. And most of the organizations and companies that we work with are really struggling with ensuring that those investments in technology get the ROI that's expected of them. And if the talent doesn't keep pace, that's just an impossible task to do. So we focus on really the talent development at the individual level. We also have a focus on transformation, making sure that organizations can transform to new operating models, which include our third focus area, which is, of course, sustainability, making sure that in creating those new operating models, we're taking every single advantage that we can to make sure that we're matching up to the triple bottom line expectations that organizations espouse to. And we want to make sure that the walk meets the talk, and that becomes critically important for the organization.
Oh, great. Thanks.
I've always been on the hunt to find information, and I firmly feel that, just like you mentioned, there is an undereducated workforce that exists. There's an undereducated leadership structure in place that doesn't even know how to hire or train the new generation of workforces that are coming in. I found the American Public University system through the RLA. They had a master's degree program. But one of the things I have not been able to really go through and start on is an ASEM accreditation journey. So if I wanted to go through and jump into that space to try to go through and learn more and just be more prepared, can you talk to me a little bit about what I would expect as I walk down that path?
Sure, because it's been a focus of mine for the last 4 years. So changing a few things. The first is to make available to the public, free of charge, ungated by being a member, all of our standards, which was a big decision taken. When I joined the organization 4 years ago, I said I want to make all of our standards available for free, and everybody looked at me like I was crazy. But we've done that. So we've taken our digital capabilities standards. We've taken our SCORE, which is the most prolifically used model. Deborah and I can talk a lot about that. But also our sustainability standards, and made them available to anyone in the world absolutely for free. The other aspect of that, of course, to your point, is that we need to be sure that we're educating for the proper positioning within a career pathway. Mm-hmm. So there are needs for foundational education for individuals that are just joining the profession. It's not a simple profession, right? It's not like you go study accountancy and you become a CPA and you do tax or audit, right? You can go a lot of different directions relative to supply chain. So making sure that we create what we call T-shaped individuals, people that have the depth of their discipline, but the breadth of understanding of how complex a supply chain could be. So we've created foundational learnings for early careerists. We've created credentialing programs with certificates for specializations in area like supply chain resiliency or areas like planning or procurement, et cetera, that isn't a high stakes credential like a certification. And then, of course, at the higher end is the certification. Those are looking to not only make a difference in their own career trajectory, but also to be sure that as a professional, they're delivering back to the organization. And that becomes critically important. So making the standards available to everyone is the responsibility we have to the community, and making sure we have education, training, and credentialing products throughout the entire career pathway of a supply chain professional, which is a bit like a maze.
Just interestingly, from my perspective, are you seeing a skills gap? Because when I talk to people in and around the industry, they're saying that actually there's not enough people coming through. There's just not the throughput of individuals that you're getting involved in the industry. Are you seeing that where you're sat?
Well, yes, and I'll ask Deborah to comment on that one as well, because I think we both see it from a multitude of perspectives. But I think the reality of it isn't, I would say if I go back 5 years ago, it was a volume issue. Yeah. Now it's keeping pace. So what we find is this tri-party relationship between associations like ourselves trying to provide education. You have, traditional university structures trying to provide education, and you have corporations who have a need that neither of those can keep pace with. Right. So we're always trying to make sure that we're complementary in the offerings, right? We're not trying to replace the baccalaureate program, for example, but there are specialized skills that people need to get real time. I mean, the best example, of course, is, and we could go on and on, of course, about it, is the use of artificial intelligence, or 2 years ago, it was the effective utilization of blockchain, et cetera. These are things that you don't have the time to go through a 4-year program to learn what the heck this might mean for my organization. I need to get real-time applicable information in the hands of these professionals so that they can make the best use of it as quickly as they can. So yes, there's some degree of volume issue, but also it's a specific competency issue. And what we're finding is the combination of building capability and competency in the organization today is outstripping the volume problem that we had a few years ago.
And this is one reason why we wrote the book, which we'll talk about at some point. But effectively, there's different types of skills, too, that you need to learn. In some cases, there's some softer skills, harder skills, domain-specific skills, and so forth. And that's where something like the SCORE model helps to organize those skills so that we can understand where in the supply chain, across the supply chain, within different areas of the supply chain. But the response that we really focused on was where supply chain leaders want to change something in their operations to become more responsible, but they often don't feel that they know enough.
Okay.
And there isn't the information organized in a way for someone to sit down and say, okay, take me through a journey, take me through the steps. Who do I go talk to? What is it that I'm going to ask? I don't think, here's why I'm going to get pushback. I'm nervous about getting pushback and feeling out of my depth to answer those questions. And that's the resource set that we put together. And I think it will be this ecosystem of learning. And I think, ASCM has done a fantastic job really showcasing the different types of resources. At conference last year, for example, they had like a book, an author's corner, and it was outstanding to see all the supply chain specific books that are coming out now that we really haven't had. I get one of the top questions I get as a direct message on LinkedIn is, what books can I read? Just to get a basic understanding to how do we boil down this entire huge field into something that's really interesting and fun to read. And it's hard as a supply chain professional once you get into the field to be able to have that continuing ed. So I think that's one space, and ASCM has done a great job showcasing and sharing their platform outside of the space of the formal education that they have. So I think it's this ecosystem, and I'm excited about the future of how much more we can promote and learn, unlearn.
So a little
and relearn.
foreshadowing there.
But anyway, it's a fantastic field to be in. And then as we're here at RLA and thinking about Rich's book, there really isn't a lot written about reverse logistics and circular supply chains. And we probably make up 90% of the literature written on those two topics, the two of us. But that means that there's going to be others. And I'm really excited about the time that our books fall by the wayside, maybe because there's dozens and dozens of other options for people. And anyway, so that piece I'm just super passionate about, because right now, really the option is for people who want to learn more. They just have to go spend a bunch of their time on Google, which is an approach, but there's a better use of their time.
Yeah, right.
When I was writing All Things Circular, because it's a daunting task, not only to take something complex and put it in a logical order that people can consume, but also going through and delving into a topic like reverse logistics, where the last book I found that was relevant was written in 1999. It was a daunting task. And I was doing research. I found Circular Supply Chain, written by Deborah Dull. And I remember reading in the first few pages of the book, number one, you encouraged reading the book over a bottle of wine, which I liked.
We also write that way as well. So
it explains the happy hours and other things. So it's a good way to go through and get immersed. And you also talked about your experience in traveling the world circuit. Both of you are really accomplished speakers and are thought leaders in this space. But you asked a question: in all of these sustainability places, where are all the supply chain professionals at? And what made me reach out to you in the first place, because I'm one of those people that reached out on LinkedIn, was the feeling that, hey, even in supply chain conferences, there's no one talking about reverse. So your book gave me the courage to go through and start writing my book. So imagine how thrilled I was when I found out that there was another book that came out, Unlearning Supply Chain, written by you two. I saw the pictures with the jazz hands and a lot of energy, and I thought that was posed. But then I met you guys, and I'm like, no, that's just how you talk.
Absolutely not.
And you live. Talk to me about how you two found each other, and then what made you go through and write Unlearn Supply Chain.
Do you want to start? It was your idea.
I'm not sure it was. I think it was our idea. Well, I think so. We've known each other for several years, and our paths have crossed. And to your point, one of the things that we found is that if you're going to make the progression of change that you need to make, there shouldn't be dividing walls between people who are driving sustainability initiatives and people who are driving supply chain efficiencies. And we'll talk about some of the myths associated with that. But
More foreshadowing.
more foreshadowing. I think the biggest underlying concept when we got together to discuss the outline of what we wanted to share was this concept of unlearning. So it's much about educating the supply chain professional as they're coming into their career, but there's also the unlearning of those of us who've been in their career for a long time. And if you're going to move from a linear supply chain to a circular one, and we work together on a paper with Ellen MacArthur Foundation for that same concept, is to just think about, what does that mean to make that transition? And for supply chain leaders that have been in their profession and know, the way that it used to be done, they were the incremental cost improvement back office people, right? And never shall they enter the C-suite and have a chair at the table. Well, that all had to change. And so the concept of the book is as much about unlearning as it is about learning to do things a little bit differently. So how do you liberate your mindset? How do you build small success stories that can be amplified and shared across the organization? How do you fail fast? You need to be doing these things if you're going to drive innovation into the organization. And I'm glad you read the book. And those who get the chance will clearly understand is we're trying to educate people to think a little bit differently and not just talk about it, but how to give them a path to really do it. And so, for lack of a better word, they can sustain sustainability inside of the organization and not just make it something that they slightly aspire to do. And they celebrate successes that are probably minute in its impact.
I think it's courage as well. It takes an element of courage to change. You've been in a job for a long time. You know that this process works here. It's always worked here. And then suddenly we all come in with our circular ideas and say, actually, you need to change. And it takes courage to take that change because people fear change. It's inherent, right? I haven't read the book, but I'm really, really intrigued.
You just described the first chapter. So unlearn is an acronym, and the first letter U is unify around the why. And it's really about that. So most people who are opening the book have already said, look, I'm interested in this. So we don't really need to tackle the foundations. It's more around figuring out this is going to be a tough journey and you're going to get some headwinds. Mm-hmm. So figure out why you want to go down this path. And maybe you're lucky enough to have a couple of folks at work going down the path with you and to keep that top of mind as you go through and say, look, there's something that we want out of this. Either we want to do the right thing, we want to be more responsible. In some cases, not to give too much away, it's actually a better business to be more sustainable. Anyway, so please do read it and let us know what you think.
And it's a competitive advantage.
It certainly is.
And I think that's what businesses really now are beginning to understand.
And I think, in if we look across, and we've all had the luxury of seeing organizations and governments and countries and companies advocate for sustainable initiatives, but they do differ dramatically by region,
right,
and even by vertical.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is also, trying to get ahead of the game. And, the struggle for U.S.-based organizations is the lack of recognition of what's coming. And it's been proven out over history. We clearly see the progression of sustainability much higher in Europe. You see the walk meeting the talk, as we talked about before. You see the government regulating more to try to build a faster progression. And those who have their head in the sand in the U.S. and think that that's not coming their way clearly are going to be blindsided very, very quickly. So it's also part of the message behind the book is get ahead of the game. Yeah. It's going to be easier. It's going to be cheaper. You're going to get people on board. You're going to unify around the why much quicker if you just recognize kind of what the headwinds are going to bring.
Yeah, and profitable, right?
Absolutely. It absolutely can be. And well, I'll just say it because I know we're coming up on time. But one of the myths I'll bust is that it doesn't always cost more to do the right thing. And there's several myths busted in the book. One of which is, when you have access to renewable energy, it's cheaper than traditionally produced energy. And it's good business. There's some marvelous stories about business leaders out of Texas moving away from the oil industry and actually into renewables because it's better business for them. Right. And so as we start to see the markets shift, I had a great conversation with a CSCO from an industrial company the other day, and He was talking about material alternatives, and here I was just as a note of how much our own minds stick. I was saying, gosh, how do you manage the cost difference? And he goes, oh no, Deborah, this is less expensive. This material alternative is less. And I thought, oh, shame on me. I wrote the book on this. But, it's a good reminder that the world is shifting, and it's worth asking the question and going back and checking and pushing on the numbers. But there's a litany of reasons why we make different decisions anyway. Just this morning, I was on a panel for Reuters, actually, on human rights in the supply chain. And that was a really, really good conversation across fair trade and food industry and Intel on how do we make sure that we're actually paying people a living wage across supply chains that we impact. And so there's lots of reasons on a healthier planet, better communities, better outcomes. We all enjoy life. We can be nicer to each other, of why we would want to positively impact the communities that we are in.
Yeah, well said.
Well, I'm cognizant of time, but it's been an absolute pleasure to sit down and chat with you both. If the listeners want to go through and learn more about ASCM or find you, what is the best way to reach out and learn more?
Link in with us, buy the book. Now, for us, ASCM.org is where you can find most of the credentialing opportunities, access to the free standards, some free introductory videos on some of the standards like SCORE, for example. So dip your toe in and definitely send us a message. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what your struggles are. If we can't provide a little bit of advice, which is unlikely, but if we can't provide a little bit of advice, because we have a lot of opinions as well, but we also can help to connect you to others. I think that's super important. I mean, we are a community of practice here that our networks become, that's how we all find each other, right? These networks are super important. And if you're having a problem, 99% of the time, someone else has been through the same issue. Maybe they've found an answer they can share or best practice. We're all about the networking and community responsibility as well.
And you can find us at circularsupplychain.network, and you can find more about the book at unlearnsupplychain.com.
Great. And I think what we'll do is on the All Things Circular website, we'll put the standards on to give people access to them. I think
that would be great. Thank you.
And go check out OE13.
All right. Well, thank you, Douglas and Deborah, very much for joining us. It's been a fantastic show so far. Thank you for listening to another episode of All Things Circular. We'll see you next time.
Great. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in. Please head over to allthingscircular.com to learn more.